Welcome, nerds. Looking at your inbox. To start off, I just want to ask, did you really think that I would spend weeks analyzing, writing, scripting, drawing, and editing just to make a video in which I'm probably wrong? In which there will likely have been no point in making other than the pure mental instability I have when it comes to this little series that you made? Because if you did, you were absolutely correct. The name's Sparkplug, and I hope you're ready for something truly deranged. Before we begin, I should say that I'm going into this with the assumption you've already watched the full series and have a general understanding of the lore. If you've not already watched the full series, 1, what are you doing here? And 2, you probably won't understand half the things I talk about, as well as get major spoilers. Oh, and this video will contain blood and strong language, so discretion is advised. With that out of the way, let's start, shall we? I'm going to be breaking the timeline up into arcs so it's easier to talk about each section. Some of these arcs have way more actual content to them, but they're all important nonetheless. These arcs will include the 1800s, Edmund Avid Miser, Arcade, Childhood, Murder Spree, Opening, Virus, Big Finale, and Aftermath. I will also be breaking each episode up into scenes. A scene ends once the clip jumps forward or backwards in time. Now, it's important to mention the employee training videos that occur throughout the series. The vast majority of the time, it is unknown when or even if a character watches one of the videotapes, making them not really possible to plot on a timeline. These are still very lore important and should not be disregarded, despite them not really fitting in a chronological order. Unless you count, the actual order of the videotapes, but I don't know when that was, so... The very oldest events in relation to the story of Dreamworld begins just before the early 1800s. A monster finds a wealthy family with seemingly great influence over its peers, making a few disappearances seemingly go away. And the monster gives them a relic. This relic is just an old video camera by today's standards, but that's not important. The monster has the family sign some form of contract binding them to do the monster's bidding. Monster I hardly. A few generations later, the camera has been passed down a number of times until it reaches a young boy named Allison. His father made some sort of attempt to get them out of the contract, of course failing because they're dealing with an actual demon. Some bullshit happens, Allison's mother is killed or been demoned or something, I don't know, something happens to her. Allison is being forced to study human essence by Litho, that kind of thing. Apparently, Allison rarely leaves his house, so Marie, our little guy, comes by and tries to convince him to come play. No idea why Mary screeches demonically, but she is silly, Your Honor. Here's a character we're all familiar with. Edmund Avid Miser. Unfortunately, there's no footage surrounding him quite yet, but that just means I get to make my own visuals. All the relevant information was found on a page, hidden on a page, hidden on a page, hidden on a page, hidden on a page on the ARG site. Yeah, that many pages. Edmund and his brother Agnes own a small workshop on the edge of the city. For work, they go to a scrapyard and fix whatever's salvageable before shipping it off to the market. Edmund, unfortunately, was unhappy with this arrangement. He wanted more. One day, while exploring past the city, something he was told he should never do, he ran into a strange man named Xavier. His entire body was covered from head to toe as if to hide what was underneath. Yeah, so anyways, he's basically a god and can bend time and space however he wants with human soul essence. But I don't want to get into that. Well, Edmund was fucking ecstatic to learn about this and immediately wanted to build a machine that allowed him to traverse time and space. Xavier, however, was not a big fan of this idea, as he's not really meant to interact with humans, let alone give them the secrets of the universe. So anyways, Edmund completely fucking ignores him and starts working on his machine. As his work continued, his experiments were going just fine, except for the fact that his body was rapidly decaying in front of him. Well, shocker, Agnes found out about this whole serial murder in order to fuel the gateway, and they got into a fight just as Edmund turned on the machine. Well, due to Edmund's declining health, the gateway was poorly constructed, and while both of them did go through, breaking time and space, Agnes's soul was ripped from his body and shattered, leaving Edmund with just a shard. The two of them had traveled back in time just before the 1980s, and Edmund bound Agnes's soul to the camera he'd managed to bring back in order to keep Agnes from either fully dying or disappearing entirely. Unfortunately, the whole gateway process had solidified him as the monster he had already physically been turning into, But now all this monster had to do was find a family to be his first stepping stone to immortality. And since he was no longer the same person, bearing the same name would be foolish, wouldn't it, Litho? We then move a decent time into the future, into around the 1980s. A man named Carlos and his wife Lucy have a dream to start an arcade together. Unfortunately, by the time they get the arcade up and running, Lucy has passed away due to unknown circumstances. The arcade was built on the same place as the mansion of the family in the 1800s, but the ground had long since caved in due to the series of tunnels underneath. Carlos ended up running the arcade with his son Owen, and the kids around town love it. Unfortunately, after the passing of Owen's mother, Carlos began seeking guidance through Litho. Owen was very young at the time. That's not delivered well. Unfortunately, after the passing of Owen's mother, Carlos began seeking guidance through Litho. Owen was very young at the time. Through a series of drawings he made for his therapist, Celio Klein, presumably a few years later, we see Carlos's descent into madness as he works with Litho, thoroughly traumatizing Owen in the process. This is the case until the very end, where he meets Allison. Eventually, though, when exploring the caves and tunnels underneath his arcade, Carlos is killed, presumably by the Collector. This leaves the arcade in the care of his son, Owen. This isn't really an arc, per se, it just happens to take place sometime between, and maybe a little bit in the previous and next arcs. Anyway, 2 of the secret tapes from Eric depict himself as he grows up. The first one from when he was about 15, detailing his love for engineering, and also bugs. The next one he's about 20, talking about how college is going for him, and how he had to move away, but there's an exciting internship back home that we never hear about again. So it doesn't even matter. We learn the most about Wyatt's childhood in the ARG game. Owen, his father, ran the arcade for a long time until his eventual disappearance searching the same caves that Carlos had. After the death of his mother as well, Wyatt moves pretty far away. No one ever told Wyatt anything about the arcade. And of course, there's the all-important second-grade murder committed by Sarah. She killed 3 of her bullies, influenced by Litho, which is the cause of most of the following events. In episode 10, there's a scene with Sarah being interviewed by the police, which must happen very quickly after, if not the same day. After that, there's a very, very large time skip to when the main cast are in high school! First, we see the video recording taken by Eric Gale, talking about 3 high school students who happen to be the 3 founders of Dreamworld. He talks fondly of them and how Lewis even offered him a job when he eventually opens his business. Ironic, isn't it? The last few scenes are also from the kids in high school, though specifically the tail end. We see Sarah and Lewis talking with each other an unspecified amount of time before graduation. Lewis explains how he has to record these for his therapist, and Sarah promptly disses the hell out of her former therapist, Celio Klein. I also think that Celio is Sarah's caretaker after something happens to her parents, but I don't remember exactly if that's the case. To change the subject, Lewin mentions a school competition, of which must be the one that got them the grant to begin Dreamworld. This fact is further backed up in the ARG game, in which the intro sequence explains prize money they won. At some point during high school, Wyatt also finds his grandfather's old camera. It's the only reason he knew about the arcade his family once ran, and began trying to learn the secrets surrounding it. A month before their graduation, Lewis breaks up with Wyatt as the 2 were previously dating, stating that he knows long distance isn't going to work and he has to move in order to start his dream business. This has to come after the previous clip, as otherwise Lewis wouldn't be totally sure that his business would in fact be opening. A plot point that is very important later on is Wyatt making Lewis promise to text him once a week. Lewis just happens to be moving to the very town that Wyatt's family arcade had been located in. An even bigger coincidence, the facility is being built directly where the arcade used to be. It's implied that Wyatt knew this was the very same town, giving him all the more reason to go investigate later on. The last scene of them in school is 1 week before graduation. The founders are very excited for their dream to finally open in 2 years. What could possibly go wrong? The founders have been working on the facility for a little while now, and even with a few bumps along the way, the opening is going quite smoothly. Lewis notes that Sarah has been rather distant lately, preferring to phone call with someone rather than work with them, but I'm sure that's fine. Meanwhile, Sarah's talking with a crazy demon from hundreds of years ago, and the ghost of a power-hungry arcade owner. The 2 of them are trying to convince her to continue the search for mortality, just as the 2 of them had, and she agrees. This leads right into a conversation between the 3 founders where Sarah is desperately trying to convince them to allow her to work on her experiments, but Lewis is having none of that bullshit. This also is the first hint towards Oliver being the one to have created the virus as a security measure against Sarah, as he mentioned a program that he's been working on. Sarah's been experimenting on 3 or 4 of the animatronics, not exactly sure, since it's unclear whether or not Millie and Gruff are one animatronic, although I do have my theories. But she apparently broke them in the process of stuffing souls into them. It's pretty easy to assume these are the souls of those kids she murdered all those years ago, but apparently that's not confirmed despite what I remember. Anyways, they're presumably locked in a room for the next while. Now this next bit gets kind of confusing, so I'll make sure to have an incredible visual aid while I do this. Can't wait for future Spark to have to deal with that. The order of the deaths is confusing, to say the least, but thanks to 40 minutes of screaming back and forth with my friend, as well as several more headaches afterwards, there's a possibility I figured out the order of the deaths. This was an actual nightmare. Starting out is easy. We all know Lewis was the first to die around 2 months before the opening of the facility. He was mauled to death by Winnie at Sarah's command. Everything else is a muddled mess. So, on a phone call between Winnie and Sarah, we learned that Sarah believes that Lewis was the only murder. This means that Ben and Liz cannot be dead yet, since Sarah was directly responsible for their deaths. Winnie goes on to explain that he actually murdered 2 more people, Eric and Mike. Eric was the one caught in the infamous house fire, where Winnie burned the house down with Eric inside, grabbed his body and soul, and ran. Mike, on the other hand, apparently got too close to figuring out something sinister about Dreamworld Entertainment, and had him crushed in a trash compactor. The aforementioned phone call is the one in which Sarah gets possessed by Litho, as well as right after the triplets' deaths, who were stabbed by Winnie after staying almost past closing time, as their deaths were the ones that instigated the call. All meaning that the timeline currently is Lewis dies, Eric dies, Mike dies, triplets die, and Sarah gets possessed. Okay, that makes sense. But here's where things start to conflict. We all know Oliver goes missing after his siblings. I say missing and not killed since he had the whole TV dropped on his head from a trap set by Sarah while snooping around her office, trying to get some files. But anyways, we know this is after due to a scene where Oliver is talking to Damien, explaining that Ben and Liz are gone. Ben was killed by some sort of advanced VR headset, where Liz was just plain stabbed by Sarah. This, however, would bump the whole timeline of deaths before the opening, since Oliver dies several weeks before the opening. Well, it's a bit odd, but yeah, we can come up with a reason for every character to be here before the opening, assuming employees started beforehand, since 4 people can hardly put the whole facility together alone, as well as doing a little bit of theorizing on the triplets. But then, in the intermission, we see Carly doing a scavenger hunt looking for her dad, which leads her to watching redacted tape and getting probably stabbed by Winnie. Well, a little before that, she bumps into Lollipop, who cannot speak, meaning this would have to happen before the deaths of Ben and Liz. What? So this leaves 2 possible options. 1, everyone died before the opening, despite that not making a ton of sense for a few characters, namely Carly, since you can hear arcade and child talking sounds in the background throughout most of the intermission. Or the option I think is most likely, Oliver did not in fact die before the opening. A scene supporting this would be during his first conversation with Damien, where you can hear sounds of kids in the arcade in the background. Which would segue us into the next arc. Okay, yes, thank you. Where was I? Right. This would make the death timeline after the opening Mike, the triplets, Sarah, she gets possessed, but same difference, Carly, Ben and Liz, and finally Oliver. So far. Okay, we got this. Before the death of Mike, however, he meets another employee named Alyssa. Mike shares his coming out story. Alyssa asks if he wants to be roommates before insulting his haircut. Instant chemistry. Also, before Oliver's eventual TV-ification, he first met the detective Damien Klein, the one investigating the disappearances. After this, Damien spends a lot of time searching around the facility trying to get intel. So right after the death of Mike, now Rex, he searches to find any other living robots and finds Ribbon and Star. Wow, lucky him. They all talk about what the hell's going on and have a nice time. About 2 weeks later, Alyssa died through mysterious circumstances, and she finds herself trapped in the body of Glory. Fortunately, Rex finds her, manages to get through to her, and they begin to bond, starting their beautiful relationship. Yeah, woo. We get it. Oh, also some kid named Andrew Owens gets fucking wrecked by Glory after trying to conduct a maintenance check. Don't worry, he comes back later. Now, this event took place probably before the opening, but it could also have been just a little bit into the opening. where originally the animatronic that was meant to be in the Starlight Theater was the animatronic known as Nightlight. Unfortunately, there was some form of incident known as the Phantom Incident of Show 05, but it was redacted and removed from the public eye, and nothing is currently known about it. We just know it was the incident that caused Nightlight to be replaced by Star. Sometime within this first little while, the Twimblow Initiative takes flight. Come get a silly little guy. All they need is your love and attention. This is also when Watchful Eye Toys starts picking up traction as Litho's way to directly influence the people going to the facility. Now after that, the majority of the rest of the timeline is just the main plot following Wyatt, which is already in chronological order, seeing as it is a series after all, and it has to make sense to its viewers. So I'll try to get through this as quickly as possible. Just before Wyatt arrives for his first day, Cheer gets angry at Ribbon for not remembering anything, before Star interjects trying to convince her that it's not his fault, but she storms off angrily. Wyatt gets to the facility and meets Star, who gives him a tour! And hey, there's the rest of the animatronics, although Cheer seems a little bit upset about something. Wonder what's up with that. Oh, also everybody's alive, who would have guessed? Anyways, a few days later, Wyatt is talking to some of the employees about how the computers have stopped working. Immediately after that, Wyatt walks away to go help Star put up decorations, and the second he gets there, the entire building collapses in on itself. Now, I believe none of the animatronics get the virus until after the collapse of the building, since in the prologue when we see Pop getting infected, the first one to get infected, I believe, with the triplets in a close second, the building seems to be entirely dark aside from red lighting coming from all the screens, a side effect of the virus infecting the building. Star panics for a few minutes, thinking he'd have more time before the building caved in, but oh, there's Wyatt and he's fine. Wyatt somehow immediately figures out it was a virus, and now they're on their way to try to get the fuck out. Star mentions it being a day of a special performance, no idea if that's relevant at all, but I'll throw it in here anyways. After the collapse, the 3/4 animatronics that Sarah had broken get out and find a little girl named Hazel, who very quickly becomes the ringleader of their little group. Back to Wyatt though, Lollipop shows up out of nowhere, and an infected Pop threatens the hell out of him while Lolly fails to convince him that Wyatt is not in fact Sarah. So Wyatt and Star book it out of there. So they're walking around the facility when, Star gets grabbed, and Pop threatens him a bunch more. Wyatt gets chased by the triplets into an office in the arcade where he desperately searches for a kill code, eventually figuring out the code is quixotic. Now I don't think this word has any actual significance to the story, but I do have a guess as to how they came up with it. You think you're so clever, don't you, Rainbot? Well, anyways, he uninfects the triplets and runs into Ribbon, who says he's already too crazy for the virus to have any effect. But oh no, Star is infected now, so Wyatt has to go be all sweet or whatever to go get Star to take his mask off, and what do you know, it works! So that very short plot point is over, thank God. They sit down and have a little talk about demons and time travel and go watch some spooky old recordings. Star says they're from the 1800s. Wonder who those could be about. After that, they leave the theater to try and help the others, I assume, when Ribbon starts bothering Lewis about some recordings or another. Swapping over to the Sarah-Litho situation, Allison's ghost is back. He tells Sarah that he's going to help Wyatt prevent him from opening the portal to the spirit realm, as well as with Damien, who can see ghosts and stuff for an inexplicable reason. Wyatt and the guys go to the trampo zone, and Wyatt falls through the floor due to the instability. He falls into the sea venture floor, and Sarah pushes him into the pool, where an infected Glory thinks he's Sarah and attempts to drown the guy. Also, Damien has been exploring the facility this whole time, while Sarah attempts to devise a plan to get rid of him. Wyatt doesn't die because of course he doesn't, due to the fact that Allison possessed Glory in order to make her put Wyatt someplace safe. The two of them chat for a bit, Allison quickly talking about how Litho is not in fact a demon and everything here is scientifical. But the two barely make it out alive, well, Allison hardly, and Wyatt manages to disinfect Glory while Allison just disappears. Glory offers to take Wyatt through some maintenance tunnels in order to quickly get to another part of the facility, so the two are on their way. It's also around this time that Sarah comes out in the worst disguise I've ever seen, claiming to be the Millie animatronic, and her and Winnie offer to go help them catch Sarah, and have a plan to just threaten Oliver in order to get Wyatt to surrender. My script just says Damien is being Damien. Star is very concerned for Wyatt since he just fell through the floor, but we also have a very heartwarming moment of Eric remembering who he was and them having a little chat. I really, really like Eric. Glory and Wyatt are searching for Cheer through the walls, and Cheer immediately comes on every screen in the building, threatening to murder Oliver if Wyatt doesn't turn himself in. Glory continues taking Wyatt through the tunnels until they come to a dead end. She lets him out to go do his thing. While ranting about how all this sucks balls, our little buddy Nightlight creeps out from the dark and hands Wyatt a crowbar just as Rex comes barging in. Wyatt accidentally knocks Rex's entire arm off, but also manages to get the virus out of his system. Yippee! Anyways, Winnie immediately comes around the corner asking to work with them after explaining that he has no interest in helping Litho build a Spirit World portal since he also lives here, you colossal dumbass. Meanwhile, Lollipop and Oliver have a very touching sibling reunion, resulting in Pop finally letting Lolly remove the virus, and Oliver passes out for the next few, days, I think. Star, the triplets, and Ribbon are all traveling together now and meet Damien on the pool floor. The group of them go around and find a strange little creature in the vents. Now, if you think I'm gonna make a joke about that, I'm clearly too strong of will to. It's Oddity! Aw, the beloved little creature. I bet it has a taste for human flesh. Then everybody finally meets up in the main room, and everybody turns on Sarah, including Cheer, even though she was still the last to be infected, after Ribbon tells her that he does remember her, and all look at that cute family moment. I really like those two. Unfortunately, Sarah takes this chance to jump down a straight drop while Wyatt attempts to recklessly follow. Star grabs him because that was so stupid. Unfortunately, his support beam cannot handle the weight of himself, Wyatt, and Oddity, so the beam snaps and they all fall. When they all get up, they begin searching for tools. To fix Star, Oddity leads them into a room, but oh god, that's Lewis's dead body. Sorry about that. Allison, hey, let's go do literally anything else. Thanks. Allison leads the three of them into the caves that house the Collector, as it's their current plans to collapse the place even more so Sarah can't escape. Wyatt shouts, "Wake the fuck up." The Collector complies, and the silly little spider guy collapses the cave system. Woohoo! During this time, the rest of the gang is just taking a breather, so good for them, they needed that. Although Oliver is still passed out at the moment and is having terrible nightmares about the things that have happened at Dreamworld. It's clear he still blames himself. Wyatt decides he doesn't want to leave the Collector trap down here, so him and Star set all the souls free, one in particular being Agnes. It's also during this time that Wyatt and Star discuss the likelihood of Litho being a scientific anomaly as compared to a demon. Good on you, you figured it out. Speaking of the non-actual devil, Litho, hey, what's up? Oh, you trapped Allison in a violin? Great, thanks. Agnes attempts to talk to Litho, but he has other plans. Although maybe it's time for those plans to restart. Due to the fact that Winnie totally betrayed Litho, he goes out on a murder rampage and then promptly forces our very own Rainbot to help him create a fake internet archive of Dreamworld Entertainment, stating that this was a small company in the early 2000s and the website made enough money to have a grand reopening. 1 week after the Collector incident, the facility reopens. Since we can't have the animatronics remembering anything from the previous iteration in order for the reopening to be a success, Sarah has Winnie wipe everyone's memory except for Star, who manages to convince Winnie to let him keep his memories, even if it's only so he'll have someone to lean against while Winnie tries to take Litho down from the inside. This also happens to be the day Wyatt finally wakes up, and Sarah just lets him go? Why? Wouldn't it just be easier to kill him now, get rid of the problem? Well, either way, he's still allowed to keep his job here, since none of the animatronics will remember him. Pen, Audrey, and Hayden still remember what happened, but frankly don't get paid enough or have any reason to care. Wyatt stays with Damien at his sibling Celio's house for the time being, along with Oliver, who still hasn't woken up yet. The two of them decide it's the best course of action to continue digging this Dreamworld facility in hopes of finding evidence towards the malicious intentions of the company. Celio finally gets home, and the two give them a few notes to look over while they discuss a plan. But they totally ignore them and just go to Dreamworld and attempt to talk to Sarah themselves. Hazel currently has the missing animatronics at her house, and her and Nightlight realize the facility has already opened back up. Nightlight says they have to go back in order to learn what the hell is going on, and Hazel agrees. Coming down from the roof, Hazel talks to Lorenzo and Nightlight for a moment about what the best course of action might be, when Hazel reveals that she found some old violin in a trash compactor. A grateful Allison comes out of the violin and tells her that if she can retrieve some classified files, he'll help her. Presumably the next day, after Cheer and the triplets go to join a birthday party, Star goes to check in on Ribbon, who's actually not doing too hot. He explains the odd way his soul is split in two, and there's actually two souls and not one, as his consciousness came from a fragment of Eric's soul. Funky, huh? Lollipop and Rex are cleaning out an old room of redacted files when Rex accidentally punches a wall so hard it opens into a secret room. While Rex goes to file a report, Lollipop goes into the secret room, suddenly gaining their memories back to an old photo of Oliver. Unfortunately, they are immediately caught by Litho and forced to have their memories erased again. Hazel sneaks into the facility with a poorly disguised Nightlight on her arm, and fortunately, this is exactly when Rex is passing by to file that report, still with a classified file in his hands. Hazel runs over to him, and 2 seconds later brings it back. I like to imagine she beat the ever-living shit out of him. and they rush out of the building as quickly as they came in. Not before Star noticed Nightlight, however. Immediately after that, Celio is sneaking around into a staff-only sector and attempts to reason with Sarah. Of course, this is no longer Sarah, so they immediately get captured by Star and Ribbon, even after their attempt to run. The two mascots for Watchful Eye Toys, Norman and Morris, host a contest to design a new Dreamworld entertainment animatronic. The new robot is planned to be unveiled at Sarah's big birthday party, but it still needs that special touch of Dreamworld magic. Morris, however, accidentally stumbles upon two Twimblos eating his human arm, and very quickly realizes something bad is going on. Who was he as a human, you may be asking? Well, none other than Andrew Owens, the dude who Glory murdered in cold blood that one time. Either way, the plans for Astra, the newest animatronic, are set into motion. What could possibly go wrong? Okay, the next bit is just the ARG game, so I'm going to summarize it very briefly. Wyatt is an idiot and accidentally gets locked inside the facility after hours while a new security system is in place that makes the animatronics try to capture him the entire time. Eventually, he finds Celio, whom he was looking for, and the two of them book it out of there. They had reason to believe that Sarah planned to kill Celio during her birthday celebration the following day, and I personally think it's because Sarah wanted to put Celio's soul in the new Astra animatronic. Alas, the two managed to escape before finally taking Oliver to get medical attention. And that, my friends, is the Season 1 Welcome to Dreamworld timeline. But remember, that's just a theory. Again! Oh boy, oh god, Jesus Christ. Well, I'm currently sitting in my dad's camping van in the garage in the dark with nothing but my laptop to see. This was actually a really fun process, and I'm glad that I participated, even though the chances of me actually winning this competition are probably next to nothing, because I've seen some of the other entries and they are so incredible. Seriously, if you've made an entry, they're so good. You should be proud of what you've done. But yeah, I wanted to give a really special thanks to two of my friends, Farrell and Lycan. There's no way this would have ever been made if it weren't for them. Their notes on my script have been incredibly helpful this whole time. And I would not have had the motivation to make this if it weren't for them. Also, this might just be a little bit, to try to convince a certain one of my friends to go watch it. Please. I promise you'll like it. Become one of us. Anyways, yeah, thank you seriously for watching this video. It was a lot of work. I hope you have a lovely day, and I don't know, maybe I'll see you again someday. Sparkplug, out.